Well, hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a who dat? Are you a who dat fan? If you're a who dat fan, subscribe to my channel. I love the Saints as much as you do. You love talking about the Saints. You love hearing about the Saints. I love talking about the Saints. I put out a video. Keep me in your subscriptions. When you see one of my videos, you get to hear what I'm saying. Then you leave in the comments what you're thinking, and I respond to my comments. And if you've been here before, you know we're neck deep in the draft. 2 weeks to go, and I thought today we would look at what has been presented as the most likely scenario for our beloved Saints in the first round and the second round of the 2026 NFL Draft. There's a lot of smoke and fire that tell us safety Caleb Downs will be the first round pick, wide receiver Chris Bell will be the second round pick. And if this is the actual scenario that plays out in a couple of weeks, where do we go from here? I've been doing these mock drafts since the middle of September of last year. I've been looking into these mocks that long, probably right after the Seattle game, which, even in early September, after that Seattle game, it felt like, yeah, we're still building. So I was looking into the draft. And I don't proclaim myself as the expert, but I've looked into all of this so in depth, so thoroughly for so many months now. Maybe someone could consider me an expert. I don't know. I don't want to say I am. All I'll say is I've looked at least one player profile for all of these picks in the top 250. Yeah, when I do mock drafts, I like to know who I'm picking. I want to know because I love our team and I know what we need and I know what this player has to be good at, and I'm going to pull up the profile before I draft them in a mock draft. And I've been doing this for months. The top 250 the players that are going to get drafted. I've looked in all of them, so I kind of know how the boards are. I kind of know where the depth is at each position, and yeah, if there are better experts than me out there, then it's probably because they have, insider connections into what actual teams are thinking. Because a lot of this is on these mocks, a lot of it's based on other people's rankings and stuff like that. And most people do their mocks on PFF, so they're literally just getting the PFF rankings. I like to do my mocks on several sites. I use four different sites mostly. Uh, I use PFF, but then I like to go to other places that give you another ranking of the players besides what PFF thinks. And everybody that does mocks uses PFF. And when they start talking about how the draft's going to fall and where players are supposed to go, they're kind of singularly basing it on this one site. You go to other mock simulators and you'll get other lists. One I like to use is Pro Football Sports Network. They have a setting where you can choose the list that you're using during the mock. So you can use PFF's rankings one time, then you can use a consensus ranking the next, then you can use the PFSN ranking on the site, then you can go to the ESPN's rankings and do a mock with theirs, and then you can choose the Athletic and do a mock with theirs. So I've done all of these mocks with different player rankings, and you can kind of see, what's more consensus than just what PFF is telling you. And then, of course, the NFL mock draft database, which is probably, you only have one player's ranking there to use, but it's always a consensus. And, that one seems pretty close when it comes to the final thing that happens in April. I find that the NFL mock draft database simulator is closer on player rankings than most of these other sites. So I use all of those, and so I've got a wide array of player rankings. And when it comes to consensus, they're all going to be wrong in the end because nobody ranks these players in reality where it matters except for organizations and front offices, and we don't really know. Maybe they think Max Uellen out of Iowa is the best edge rusher in the class, for all we know. So, this video is going to be about focusing on what I've noticed in the last month, probably. And some things will definitely change in the next couple of weeks. We only got 2 weeks to go, though. And right now, it seems that best case scenario and also a very likely scenario for a lot of Saints fans would be Caleb Downs is sitting there in the first round. You draft him, the safety out of Ohio State. You've got your nickelback. You've got a perennial future Pro Bowler and team leader and everything else. Caleb Downs seems to be the all around great player that you'd want to have on your team. And if you would just have him play safety, he'd be great at that too. Of course, he's going to highlight as the star in this Brandon Staley defense. You get Caleb Downs with the first round. And then in the second round, I mean, you might as well just not even pay attention because it seems like that one's on lock too. Wide receiver Chris Bell out of Louisville played with Tyler Shuck 1 year, and then now Bell's coming out. He's got an injury, so people think he's going to get passed on, and there's a likely chance he'll be there at pick 42 for the Saints. And Tyler Shuck keeps saying he wants him. Bell keeps saying he wants to come here. It just seems like a match made in heaven. And so there you go, the most likely scenario for the Saints when the draft happens in a couple of weeks. Taking Caleb Downs with the first round pick, taking Chris Bell with the second round pick. So I'm good with this. This is nice. This would be all right. This fills needs that the Saints have, two very primary needs. I'll pull up my list of the team needs as it stands right now, and nickelback and wide receiver are at the top of the list, and there you go. You get your safety Caleb Downs, he can play nickel. You get your wide receiver Chris Bell, you're good to go. So then I started thinking if this is a most likely scenario, and if this is a consensus first and second round pick that everybody can get behind, and we'd all be pretty excited, I think. It made me think about, well, what's going to happen afterwards? I look at the positions of need the Saints have, and then I start to think about the draft board, and that's where I'm going to pull up my big board, and I'll have it here, and it's probably too small of print for everybody to read everything, but I'll leave it up, and let's start talking about different scenarios. So we take Caleb Downs with the first round pick, and then we take Chris Bell with the second round pick. I look at my team needs. We all want an edge rusher. We need a backup center. We could use some outside help at cornerback. Any defensive line help will do. Any backup offensive lineman later on in the draft would be a good acquisition for us. And if you have a chance to grab a tight end or a running back, that would be nice too. Couple of positions I don't have on this team needs list right here is linebacker and safety because we're pretty deep on the roster at linebacker and safety. However, this draft boasts a lot of really good linebackers and safeties. So you may find yourself in a situation where best player available is a linebacker or a safety. On my on my big board right here, you can look at all of it, and I've encouraged you in other videos to figure it out for yourself. If you take from one position one round and then check out the next round and look at the the depth at the positions. And so, based on my big board and what I've seen over the months, I can tell you that if you want a running back, you know, there's a chance for you to get one after the third round, into the third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round. I would wait till the third round. You can see here there's a handful of players worth taking in the first two rounds. If you don't get Jeremiah Love, you just wait for a running back. At wide receiver, I'm thinking any round will do. If you want to grab one in the first, second, third, or in day three, the fourth round on my big board is basically day three. You can get wide receivers in any round, and they'll be pretty good players. Another position group that you can get all throughout the draft is cornerback. Now, of course, the higher you get them, the better they are. But there are some really good, talented cornerbacks even late in the draft, and that's a position that you can address all throughout the draft. Wide receiver, cornerback, and in my opinion, defensive line. You're going to get different types depending on what you want and when you want to get them. But I think there's a lot of really good defensive linemen in the draft worth getting in every round, including day three. A lot of players that you can take a chance on at defensive line in day three that could help this team out pretty good. Those three positions, I think, are throughout the draft: wide receiver, cornerback, defensive line. At any point, you can grab a cornerback or a wide receiver. So I mention that mostly to say getting Chris Bell in the second round sounds great for everybody, but what do you do after you get Caleb Downs and Chris Bell? Where do you go in round three? Your biggest need at that point would be an edge rusher. And I'll give you the caveat now, you don't always draft for need. Sometimes you just draft best player available, and sometimes that's at a position that you're chock-a-block full at. So yeah, there's a chance of getting a safety or a linebacker at any point in the draft, and you're just going to have to deal with it, even though it's not a specifically a position of need based on our roster. What is a position of need is edge rusher. And that's where the catch comes in for me. Getting Caleb Downs in round one, getting Chris Bell in round two, you hit your two top needs, but then you get to edge rusher. I look at my big board and I look at round three, and it's yeah, the pickings are slim. You're kind of hoping somebody falls from the round two tier. But if you get Downs in round one and Bell in round two, and then you're trying to address edge rusher, you're kind of hoping Derek Moore from Michigan is still hanging around. Maybe you see a big role for Romello Height out of Texas Tech. There's Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee that you can consider at edge rusher. And then you're starting to reach, whether it's Nadami Tucker out of Western Michigan or Caden Curry out of Ohio State. You got Mikhail Kamara out of Indiana, Mason Reiger out of Wisconsin, and Max Llewellyn after that, Iowa. You're hoping one of those guys at edge rusher is going to be that missing piece for you. So you could also look at linebacker if you want to get an edge presence in the third round. You might go just Sean Barham out of Michigan, or you could look at Harold Perkins out of LSU. So there are edge rushers at linebacker you might want to take a chance on too. This is Simon again, my Simon boy. He's very handsome. He wants some lovin's right now. So you don't always break down the draft like this. You don't always think about, having to fill a certain position and forcing your hand this way. I just thought since Downs and Bell were the most popular 1-2 punch, where do you go after that? So my big board, you can look at the third round and you can choose for yourself. I'm starting to think, yeah, edge rusher, you have some choices. I really like the choices before, though, in the first round and second round at edge rusher, way more than the chances I'm taking in the third round or later. So that's why I'm doing this video. You think about what direction you want to go. If Downs and Bell is 1 and 2, what's at 3? Because before edge rusher, there's other positions. You know, if a safety falls, like I said, linebacker and safety, they're really good in this draft. So there may be somebody there. The third round is really where the tight ends start to come off, and you can get a really good tight end in the third round. Probably a better prospect at tight end than you would perhaps at edge. It's something to think about. The interior offensive line is another spot where I think the third round and the fourth round are really good rounds to address. Interior offensive line, whether it be a center or a guard, you can look at my big board. Interior offensive line in the third round and fourth round is just great. And third and fourth round is great for tight end. So that's your option. Downs, then Bell, and then what do you do in a third round? You kind of hope an edge rusher's there that you really like. For me, I'm leaning towards Derek Moore. I kind of like Josephs. I think there's some potential with height, although he's a situational pass rusher only. And then Adami Tucker. And after that, I mean, you might want to wait till the fourth round. Jay Barham, maybe you grab him in the third round at linebacker, and he can highlight as an edge rusher. I'm just saying that's just one of those things I thought it was interesting to think about. Downs and Bell, round one, round two, and everybody's happy. And then where do you go at edge rusher? So what's the solution? Maybe you address edge rusher in the first round or the second round. If that's the case, I'm not very high on the edge rushers in the second round. I mean, somebody would have to fall. You know, if a TJ Parker's still there or a Cassius Howe, I still have questions about Cassius Howe at edge rusher. So maybe Bain or Bailey in the first round is the way to go when you think about positional need for this team. Maybe Bain or Bailey in the first round would be best case scenario for the Saints. You get an edge rusher, you get a top notch, top of the line in this draft edge rusher. Then in the second round, you're looking at trying to fill wide receiver or cornerback again. And the second round is just great for nickelbacks. It really is. I mean, you think you might can wait till the third round if you go ahead and get Bain or Bailey in the first round. Then you go ahead and grab Chris Bell in the second round. You hope in the third round that Traden Stukes is still there. Perhaps shoot, maybe even Scott, Keontae Scott. I doubt it. I think Stukes and Scott are going in the second round, and that's the best two nickelback options. But you can still address nickelback in the third round. You can go the safety route and go with Wheatley or Kilgore or Clark. So there's a chance. There's a chance you get edge rusher in the first round, your wide receiver in the second round, and you can still sneak in a pretty good nickel option in the third round. Primarily with either Wheatley at safety, Kilgore at safety, or Clark at safety. Maybe if you're looking at positional depth in the draft and you're trying to focus on fixing those top three problems, maybe the best route is to get your edge rusher in the first round and then go nickelback in the second round. You can guarantee getting Stukes or Scott if that's your play in the second round. You can also include a couple of other players there, Chris Johnson or D'Angelo Pons or maybe Keith Abney, some better quality cornerbacks that you might be able to fit at that nickel spot. But certainly you can get Keontae Scott or Traden Stukes with 42, I'm thinking. And that leaves a hole at wide receiver. And like I said, wide receiver to me is wide open. You can get a really good one in any round in this draft. So go ahead and get the edge rusher in round one. Get the nickelback in round two. So let's say Ruben Bain or David Bailey in round one, and then Traden Stukes or Keontae Scott in round two, and then grab the wide receiver in round three. and there should be a ton of them there. If Elijah Surratt's still there, maybe Chris Brazel's still there. But if not, maybe Branch, maybe Bernard is still there. And then you certainly got your choice of Malachi Fields or maybe Skylar Bell, maybe Ted Hurst is still there in the third round. Antonio Williams, Bryce Lance, Jacoby Lane, Dejon Stribling. You got Dion Burks, you've got Allen, you've got Josh Cameron. I mean, there's a ton of wide receivers you can get all throughout the later rounds in the draft. Now, if you want a guy that's really going to make a difference at wide receiver, I still think you can get one. If you can get Elijah Surratt in the third round, or especially Chris Brazel too. Oh, come on, Branch or Bernard. I'm still a big fan of Fields, regardless of what some may think. And yeah, Bryce Lynch, Ted Hurst, guys you can take a chance on in the third round with a lot of upside. Dejon Stribling, Jacoby Lane. I mean, you can get a good wide receiver in the third round or the fourth round. So that's pretty much the point to this video. I wanted to talk about positions of need. I wanted to talk about the most popular scenario right now. Getting Caleb Downs in round one, Chris Bell in round two, and where does that leave you after that? I'm thinking you might be better off not getting Chris Bell in the second round and addressing some other position. But yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, it's up to you. If Chris Bell is just so much better than everybody else, why take a chance on a wide receiver in the third round when you can get Chris Bell, if that's the play. You guys let me know. I mean, my big board is there. I'll pull it up for big screen one time here and play with it. I encourage you to. If you get Caleb Downs in round one, wide receiver Chris Bell in round two, see what happens after that, which direction you want to go in. That third round is a really good round for interior linemen, offensive linemen, or tight end. So, and there's some safety options there in round three. I mean, there's cornerback and safety options there. I think, you can do a switcheroo. You can go wide receiver, nickelback in the second, third round, either way. Nickelback, then wide receiver, then nickel, which kind of makes, Caleb Downs one of those. You really want to take that in the first round when you can get a nickel later on? Yeah, Caleb Downs is a great player. I'm sold on Caleb Downs. I would be very happy with Caleb Downs and Chris Bell as our 1-2 punch. But it does leave the question of what to do in the third round. Get the best player available. Get a center. And yeah, you're you're going to be looking for edge rusher way late. And edge rusher is one of those things that I think it just gets weaker and weaker. It's deep. You can get some pieces, but the best edge pieces are certainly in the first and second round. You guys let me know what you think. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos about our Saints and the draft. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?